Hello, everybody. New faces, old faces. So sweet to be here. Yeah. I'm noticing more and more that I like, before we kind of deepen in, I like to just get a temperature check of the room, just kind of hearing a word from folks about how you're doing right now. So just kind of popcorn style, if you feel like connecting with yourself for a moment and naming what it's like inside of you right now and offering a word. I can start us off. My word right now is settling. Contentment. Hungry.
Grateful.
Grateful. Human. Refuge. Yeah. Tense. Yeah. Safe.
Here.
Here. Fatigued. Yeah. Opening. Tired. Steady. Settling. Heard another voice. New. Yeah. Just see if the Zoomers said anything. I bet they did. No? No Zoomers. Okay. So from those one words, we can see that here we are in the human condition, feeling a lot of different things. Before we move into our practice, we'll start with practice. But before we start with practice, I've been noticing that I keep hearing a lot lately about ancestors. Just different people speaking about their ancestors. I'm not sure why, I'm not sure what's in the air. But as I was coming tonight, I was just feeling the deep gratitude, like we're all here because of our ancestors' survival. A lot of them went through really hard things, maybe further in history or closer. And just really powerful to be sitting here with so much freedom and privilege, both our Dharma ancestors and our familial ancestors. And I'm just wanting to acknowledge them tonight and offer a bow to them for their strength and courage. So if you're new to practicing with me, know that your body has permission to be how it needs to be in this space. If sitting isn't your forte, you're always welcome to lay down in a space, get back support. The Buddha taught practice in pretty much every shape. And so I like to respect that too when I facilitate meditation. And also though we are quiet together, we do not practice in a vacuum, which means that if you need to sneeze or cough or fart, you're allowed to. Yeah, and if you need to use the bathroom at any time tonight, you are allowed to. So just take care of yourselves and know that that is really what takes care of us as Sangha, actually. So as we get closer to sitting, we'll sit for about half an hour. I'll offer a little bit of light guidance in the beginning, and I'll start us off with just a little bit of chanting that I'm guessing many of you are familiar with, paying homage to the Buddha, both the historical Buddha, our ancestor, the Buddha, and also to that which knows, awakening that which knows in ourselves. So let's all just take a few deeper breaths, permission to breathe right now. If you want to sigh, you're even allowed to. Yeah, let's do that a few times. And I like to rest my eyes closed, but if it's not time for you or it doesn't feel good to close your eyes, then don't. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Let your attention, your awareness start wide. Let yourself make contact with the sound in the space that we're in, the soundscape. And even right here at the beginning, notice your level of effort. Notice if you're straining to hear sound, or if you've already traveled far away. Experiencing the allowance of sound, the receptivity, this middle path of effort, receiving sound. And bringing that attention a little bit closer to the body, you might check out if the body is over-efforting. Perhaps there's holding happening in places you might have not noticed before. Checking it out, checking out if there's holding, sometimes even in the eyes, the jaw. And the shoulders, the neck. Softening any extra holding in the heart, the chest, the belly. Noticing the back body too. If there's holding even between the shoulder blades or the low back. Checking out the hands. the tops of the legs, the lower part of the legs, the feet, the toes. You might even check out if you're holding at all right in the mind. Is there any tension, trying? And then giving permission for the body to receive the support of whatever it's sitting on. Chair, cushion, earth. Allowing some more softness, restfulness into the stability that holds you. Returning to the body, sitting here, resting here, is an ancient way to return to presence. And if attention wants to draw even closer to experience, you might find the breath inside the body, moving the body. And so as we move into some silent practice together, I give you permission to rest in breath, to rest in body, or to rest in sound. We can remind our minds, if they wander, as they wander, again and again, that right now, just for this holy period of practice, nothing else needs to be tended. check out your level of effort. Do I need to sit back a little bit? Am I over-efforting? Do I need to sit up a little bit because I'm falling asleep? Finding your middle like a tight rope walker. A poem as we come into the sunset of our meditation period. This poem comes from Uttara, an elder nun, and she calls it Crossed Over. I asked Patachara, "What is the path?" Patachara said, "Just see all thoughts, words, and actions arising all by themselves, not from some imaginary point within." I only partly understood, but I took a seat. As the sun was setting, I saw the endless line of one thing leading to another that had brought me to the cushion that night. Just see all thoughts, words, and actions arising all by themselves, not from some imaginary point within. For those online, I'm ringing the bell. So let's take about 5 or 6 minutes break. We can keep the hall silent for anyone who wants to continue sitting or doesn't want to be social. And I'll see you back here soon. So here's the thing. I only read you half of the poem, so I'm going to read the rest. And this comes from the first Free Women. They're kind of like interpretations, or not one's own take, but Maddie Weingast's own take on the Therigatha, which are the poems of the elder nuns. Okay, we'll try it again. This is take 2. Okay. Another Uttara crossed over is the name of the poem. Uttara wrote it. I asked Patachara, what is the path? Patachara said, just see all thoughts, words, and actions arising all by themselves, not from some imaginary point within. I only partly understood, but I took a seat. As the sun was setting, I saw the endless line of one thing leading to another that had brought me to the cushion that night. As the moon was coming up, I saw the arising and passing away of all things in every direction. As dawn was breaking, wisdom rose in the east and set fire to the long dark night. But don't take my word for it. Set fire to the darkness within. I promise, it's like nothing you've ever seen. I was reflecting today on how it is that the Buddhist teachings have survived this long. It's really something. And a hypothesis that I have is that somehow through history, through many times of deep war and political unrest and huge changes, times when humans can feel so helpless and so powerless, the Dharma, the Buddhist teachings, are actually offered as this place of empowerment, this place of choice. We're being shown that we actually have choice about what we pay attention to, what we experience as wholesome or unwholesome, and cultivating the wholesome and renouncing that which is unwholesome. So much of it is happening on the inside, not just the outside. And so this becomes a path of deep liberation in the midst of any conditions. That's why I think maybe it's lasted for all this time. And I find in my practice and as I teach, that's where I find home, is the way that this practice is inherently healing or trauma sensitive or empowering, provokes agency in one's life. So tonight we'll talk about how do we become more aware of the choice that we have, especially related to unwholesome thoughts. Right? You might know your own version of thought patterns, sensation, views, beliefs, habits that feel like you are victim to. You have no choice around. Some of these we even see in our family patterns. We can see directly who we got these habits from, or the society, right, where we picked up these unwholesome patterns. And the tricky thing is that oftentimes these thoughts, these sensations, these beliefs, we take to be ours. Me, mine, I, right? This is the delusion, which is good news, actually. I was thinking about Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj's book, I Am That. This emphasis on the I am, which is really the emphasis on this pure state of awareness before there's identity, before there's thought. It's this pure being without identification. That's what a lot of this path points us to, this other way, this other beingness, way bigger than our little minds. So in that practice of I am that, right? I am the rocks, I am the trees, I am them, right? We start to loosen this small sense of self, opening it up, loosening it up, and feeling the potential of a wider way of being, of kind of returning, a homecoming into awareness, into pure being. And lately what's been happening for me is I'm playing with maybe a sister of this. Instead of I am that, I've been playing with I'm not that. When I'm activated in such habitual ways and I feel that constriction of my heart that I often react to and feel like I need to get rid of, I say, I'm not that. I actually don't need to identify with this for the billionth time. I actually don't need to make this my project for the next hour. I'm not that, actually. I'm not that. I'm not that thought that I have about the world. I'm not this thought that I believe about myself and the world. I don't actually have to cling to this. I'm not that. It's just phenomena arising, right? Like she says in the poem, you don't have to believe this comes from some imaginary point within. It's phenomena arising. So I am that, I'm not that. All of this is this practice of disidentifying, loosening this sense of self, this false sense of self. And if we look at like the second noble truth of the Buddhist teachings, this is where he's saying, look, grasping and clinging to anything makes it hurt more. You don't have to work that hard. You don't have to do that. You don't have to keep remaking yourself again and again. There's a really beautiful chant. It's called Salutations to the Triple Jewel. I won't read all of it, but I'll read a portion of it. Having heard the teaching, we know this. Birth is dukkha, unsatisfactoriness. Aging is dukkha, and death is dukkha. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are dukkha. Association with the disliked is dukkha. Separation from the liked is dukkha. Not attaining one's wishes is dukkha. In brief, the 5 focuses of the grasping mind are dukkha. Attachment to form, attachment to feeling, attachment to perception, attachment to karma formations, attachment to sense consciousness. For the complete understanding of this, the Blessed One in his lifetime frequently instructed his disciples in just this way. right? All this attachment, all of it is dukkha. He further instructed, form is impermanent, feeling is impermanent, perception is impermanent, kama formations are impermanent, sense consciousness is impermanent. Form is not self, feeling is not self, perception is not self, kama formations are not self, sense consciousness is not self. All conditions are impermanent. There is no self in the created or the uncreated. I don't know about you, but when I hear that, it's like everything I would think is me isn't. It's impermanent. It's not self. And in fact, the more I attach to it, the more suffering I'm going to experience. We're almost getting like a recipe for liberation in that. So then comes the question, what happens when you believe it is you? What happens when you're stuck? Anyone here gets stuck in these loops that are on repeat? Yes, about how bad you are, or it is, or they are, right? It's like conceptually, this is a great idea. Love what the Buddhist teachings, but how do we practice with it? What does this actually look like? This is where I have like so much gratitude for the way the Buddha taught. There's such a misinterpretation that the Buddha was like, right, Buddhist, religious. But a lot of folks will describe the Buddha as more of a scientist, studying suffering and the recipe for its end. And so it's known that the Buddha would have lists that he would offer for different practitioners to give them guidelines of how do you really walk towards liberation. This is really what we're here for, is freedom. It's not just a little bit of peace. There's a lot of peace on the platter that's available to us. So the Buddha actually gave a discourse on the removal. It's called the removal of distracted thoughts. I think of it more as the removal of like unwholesome thoughts. This is called the Vitaka Santana Sutta, and it comes from the middle-length discourses. I love that in these discourses, there's always a location for the Buddha, right? This acknowledgement of the land that the Buddha is teaching upon. So here the Buddha is at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove in Anapindika's Park. He seems to teach there a lot. And so he asks, I'll say, I want to actually say this. I've edited some of the words to make it a little more gender fluid, to also use practitioners instead of monks so that we can see ourselves in these teachings. So just know that I've made those edits. Practitioners, when a practitioner is pursuing the higher mind, right, this path to awakening, from time to time, they should give attention to 5 signs. What are the 5? When a practitioner is giving attention to some sign, and owing to that sign, there arises in her evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then she should give attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, right? So when something arises in our attention that starts to creep in, starts to give off those feelings of greed, hatred, or delusion, right? They just creep in. They just happen sometimes. So the Buddha is saying the first practice is to shift attention and focus on something wholesome. And he says when a practitioner gives attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, her mind becomes steadied, internally composed, unified, and concentrated. I like to think about playing music on a record player. This is actually true for a CD too. You know, when we had these ways of listening to music where sometimes they'd get scratched and they'd start to skip, right? If you walked into someone's house and they were just continuing to listen to something skip and skip and skip and skip, you'd be like that. I mean, I would be like, what is going on? You're crazy. So in this practice, what the Buddha is saying is pick up the needle and put it on a new song. Right? You're sitting in traffic like, you know, this person is going so slow. If I could just get around them. And he's saying, look out the window and see that tulip blossoming. Take a break from the unwholesome. Switch the channel. And sometimes that works. Sometimes we can like nip it in the bud and just switch channels. Not so much effort. And then sometimes it doesn't do it, right? We try to change the song and there's more. There's just more. We're still in the unwholesome. So this comes number 2. The Buddha understands we're not always getting it the first time. So the Buddha says, if while they're giving attention to some other sign connected with what is wholesome, there still arise in them evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then they should examine the danger in those thoughts. Like, these thoughts are unwholesome. And they'll result in suffering, right? One of my teachers, Kitty Sorrow, he says it's like giving yourself a Dharma talk. It's like you interrupt where you're headed and you say, where are we going to end up? If I follow these patterns of mind, which I've probably done a billion times, where do I usually end up? And so it's taking a moment to see, okay, if I keep going, is this going to end up in unwholesome or wholesome or freedom, right? Is this going to lead me to more time spent in suffering, or am I going to end up actually feeling some freedom? Another thing Kitty Sorrow talks about, and I love this because I love when there's like sensation-based teachings. He talks about feeling the fever or the scent or the intensity of unwholesome thoughts. You know, or like, I'm just going to tell them because they just don't get what's going on. You know, if we interrupt ourselves, it's like, there's like a feel to it, right? We're so invested in our suffering. We're so convinced, right? I think this happens a lot related to resentment. For me, it happened last night. For me, if I can't fall asleep or I'm woken up in the middle of the night, it's really easy for me to get caught in a cycle of, oh gosh, and then I'm going to be unprepared for tomorrow. Oh, I'm teaching tomorrow. Oh, you know, am I going to be awake? And I start to get myself more and more stressed. That thought pattern never helps me go to sleep. It's never, ever helped me rest. So that's the awakening. Where is this taking me? I actually don't have to follow it all the way to the end to see. We can check it. That's another step. Where are we headed? Okay, so we might be able to know, yeah, I'm heading towards unwholesome. I'm actively suffering right now. This doesn't look good. And I still can't let go. You know that? You're like, I know this is a bad idea. I know I'm causing harm to myself or another, and yet I'm so invested. That's why there's 5. We're just on 2. Right? The Buddha studied the mind. Here we are. Okay, so number 3. If while she is examining the danger in those thoughts, there still arise in her evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then she should try to forget those thoughts and should not even give attention to them. When she tries to forget those thoughts and does not give attention to them, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion are abandoned in her and subside. Can you forget about it? I actually find this one really reminds me of the first one, like change channels. And there's a little bit of, I think there's a little bit more detail here. One thought that came to me was like reading the news. I've been hearing a lot about this from folks who read a lot of news, and that they find that reading more and more news at a certain point, it's actually creating more and more views of the world, usually in the negative, right? It starts to go south and more south and more south, right? There's some level of reading the news to be up to date with what's happening. And there's some point where we start to actually create suffering for ourselves and for others, right? You know, go into the grocery store and you see people talking about, oh, how bad it is, how bad it is, how bad, you know, and it's just like, oh my God, I feel so bad by the time I leave the grocery store. So in this third practice, in the forgetting, it's almost like, how can we sometimes protect our senses? How do we allow ourselves to look away, right? So that might mean in the midst of reading the news, it's allowing yourself to look away, to put it down, to protect yourself, to protect the senses. The Buddha talked a lot about this, protecting the senses from what is unwholesome. So there's almost a renunciation here. Can I put it down for a moment? And in that, we start to also study the mechanics of how we feed our suffering, how we throw fuel onto the fire pit without knowing it. Starting to realize we might be able to sense when we're right at capacity and not feed the fire anymore. Another aspect of this is in knowing certain circumstances or certain people that evoke these evil, unwholesome thoughts, as the Buddha calls them. There's that choice not to do it again, not to pick it up again, not to go to that thing that that stirs up unwholesome feelings, not to go to that place, not to go visit that person, right? Or to do it less. We're allowed to protect ourselves, protect our senses, right? And unfortunately, that's still sometimes not enough. If while he's trying to forget those thoughts and is not giving attention to them, there still arise in him evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then he should give attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts. When he gives attention to stilling the thought formation of those thoughts, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion are abandoned in him and subside. What this teaching is pointing to is to notice the momentum of unwholesome thoughts and slow it all down. We do this in our meditation practice, right? We come in here at a certain speed, and as we start to practice, we settle and we start to see more clearly. That can happen with unwholesome thoughts too, right? Sometimes we're sitting and we start to see more clearly what's going on, right? We start to kind of see our delusion. I'm thinking about how sometimes, like in my therapy practice, when I work with folks with like a ton of anxiety, when it really feels like panic or out of control, sometimes I just say, lay down on the ground and put your legs up on the wall. Flip it upside down, right? Slow it down. Let the nervous system regulate, right? Because otherwise we're moving in this momentum that we don't even realize we're moving in. And it keeps kind of like, those snow globes, it's like we're shaking and it's getting more and more confusing. So we slow it down. There's this acronym in like the 12-step programs, WAIT, why am I talking? We can inquire, right? We can kind of listen to our thoughts. Am I trying to be right? Am I trying to be connected? Why am I involved right now? Check ourselves. And to do that, we need to slow the pace. I speak as someone who moves at the pace of urgency, unfortunately, too much, and I'm working on it just as much. So slowing it down to a pace that we can see clearly. I like to say, can I move at the pace of mindfulness? Right? And with mindfulness, we're seeing clearly. All right, here's the last one, number 5, because sometimes that still doesn't work. We slow down, we lay down, our feet are up on the wall, and we're still resentful. This is a wild one that I'm amazed by. If while they are giving attention to stilling the thoughts, and there still arises in them evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion, then, with their teeth clenched and their tongue pressed against the roof of their mouth, they should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. When with their teeth clenched and their tongue pressed against the roof of their mouth, they beat down, constrain, and crush the mind with mind, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, hate, and delusion are abandoned in them and subside. This is then called a master of the courses of thought. She will think whatever thought she wishes to think, and she will not think any thought that she does not wish to think. She has severed craving, flung off the fetters, and with the complete penetration of conceit, she has made an end of suffering. So that last piece is like, the Buddha's like, if you do these 5, if you work with these 5, that is then full choice. You have choice on what you spend your attention on. Okay? So I don't feel like I could be a good representative of crushing mind with mind. I don't quite fully do that in my own practice, but what I can say, the way that I work with that is where I started, which is I'm not that. It's this total refusal. I'm not that. It's almost like, I don't need to do that again. I'm not even going to flirt with it. I'm not that. I highly recommend trying this out. It's really cool with old habits. Just to drop that in. It's the same way we come back to our breath. Here, you come back to that thought. I'm not that. You know what? I'm not going to take that on right now. Yeah. So before we open to Q&A, I'll just read a little piece again from this poem. As the moon was coming up, I saw the arising and passing away of all things in every direction. As dawn was breaking, wisdom rose in the east and set fire to the long dark night. But don't take my word for it. set fire to the darkness within. I promise it's like nothing you've ever seen. All right, my dears, a few minutes, a few questions or comments before we close for tonight. We've got Zoomers who you're welcome to unmute yourself. And for those in the room, you're welcome to raise your hand and Jen will bring you the mic. And for community's sake, it's sweet if you'll say your name first.
I don't know how to turn that on. Okay, this is Jen with the mic. Did I see your hand up? Great, start with your name and hold it close.
My name's Arthur. So when I do my version of these practices that you just described, and particularly if I'm on a retreat or meditating deeply, I start to see things, I see some things clearly. And what I see is that what's driving many of these thoughts are emotions that are arising, powerful emotions. And when I look at them, let's say I see anger. If I look at it carefully, I see there's much more there than anger. There's fear, there's sadness. That word anger is really a placeholder for something that I find hard to understand. It's much bigger than that. So I'm not sure this is a question. It didn't turn out to be one. It's more a comment.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and something that I'm thinking of when you say that is like sometimes, especially when we feel these repetitive thoughts, especially on retreat, I think this can happen on retreat. Sometimes what's going on is that these feelings haven't been felt and they need our attention. They need to be felt. And sometimes, which for me, this feels really liberating because sometimes I spend too much time in that side. Sometimes we can say, it's just sensation, it's not me. So there's this kind of toggle that was kind of from that chant, right? That feelings or sensations are not self. And I feel that too, or that they're impermanent, right? So I was thinking that when you said that. Thanks for sharing, Arthur.
This is Jen, and I'm holding the microphone, and I would love to make a comment. I appreciate the words that you chose, talking about provoking a sense of agency. And to me, it really gets very delicious when you are using female pronouns. Yeah. I can't tell you, for my whole life as a little girl, I'm always like, him, his, man, human. And I'm just like going, well, what about us? So to flip it and to just for an evening hear the feminine pronouns is just exceedingly medicinal. And I really want to language that. And I think a lot of people don't think about it, but a lot of people do think about it. Thank you.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I feel similarly. Yeah.
Great. I'm crossing. Okay, Nan and then Daniel. Thanks.
I'm Nan. I'd just be interested in a little bit of your thoughts on the poem on the fire of the darkness.
Yeah. Did you get it? I just, before I say things, is it confusion or do you have a little taste of it?
I have a taste of it. I guess I was just interested in your exploration of that or sense of where he was reflecting.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big,
Yeah.
could be taken as a big thing.
Yeah. I love these poems because the more I read them, like they really feel like awakening poems. Like the more I read them, the more comes through. And actually, I love that you just asked that. Nan, is that your name, Nan? Because just that last time I read it, what came to me was like the fire of awareness that then shows what's unconscious or kept in the darkness. And when we start to shine awareness, we start to see clearly, right? Like that's where the agency is, that we start to realize we have so much more choice, that it's so much more than we thought it was. And it's both the intensity of cultivating awareness, because then we see everything that's been in the dark, which can be horrifying. But then it's also can be so liberating, because then we start to have choice. That was the way I took it tonight. Setting fire, like lighting it up. Yeah.
Hold on, we're going to go to Daniel. Thanks, and then we'll come back to you.
Hello, this is Daniel. Thank you for getting into that sutta tonight. I find it exceedingly useful. Because when I find myself getting into, getting captured by the unwholesome thoughts, there's a part of me that knows, like, hey, snap out of it, bud. But to have like 5, it almost feels like, those thoughts are fickle. And if you just are persistently like, no, break them down, that they will give in and you will be set free.
That's right.
So, yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also see how in charge of our suffering we are, how much we're feeding our suffering because of our ignorance. And one of the things I didn't name earlier on that I do want to name, it was named in the sutta, is also desire, right? Which we often think of as pleasant, wanting something, and it's actually so unpleasant. Desire in the feeling way can drive you nuts. I'm sure people have had crushes in here. Oh my gosh, on and or want, I want. So it's that too, which that one hides a little more, because we sometimes think that's wholesome.
Hello, thank you very much. What gets me caught is the feelings that are connected to the thoughts. And that is tricky to move through and past. Do you have any suggestions?
I mean, first of all, me too. I live in that world, getting stuck in emotions, totally. I feel you, is just what I want to say first. Like, I get it. And I think kind of what I was commenting before with Arthur is sometimes it is possible to not have to digest the whole emotion, right? So like letting sensation just be sensation and not having to add interpretation, not having to digest the whole thing. And sometimes, if it keeps staying around, my guess, my experience is that emotion needs company. It needs compassion, it needs care. And I might be able to do that on my own, or I might need company. I might need a friend to sit with me, to help me experience the emotion fully. I might need a professional. I might need a tree to lean against. And so I think this is where we as practitioners become wiser and wiser, is to check out when there is the option to just know the experience of the emotion but not have to keep playing with it, and to know when it's time it's time for it to be cared for. Yeah, that's as far as I've gotten at this point, I'd say.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, my dears. coming towards the end. Yeah, and just curious as we're arriving at the end of Sangha today, just curious to invite you all to check in with yourself for a moment, maybe take a breath, check in and see how it is now. We named all these feelings at the beginning, seeing how it's changed, how it's different. And we always practice in our Sangha here a dedication of merit. So really feeling the fruits of our practice together and dedicating it out to all beings or other beings that aren't sitting here with us. And I have been pretty committed to this Metta chant from the Visuddhimagga. I've chanted it here before. And in my Buddhism Beyond Patriarchy course, we've been chanting it, and it's really powerful. And so I thought for the dedication of merit, I'll just speak some of it because it really encapsulates all beings. So if you'd like to bring prayer hands in front of your heart, if that feels good, you can do that. And if not, don't. May all beings, all breathing beings, all creatures, all individuals, all personalities, all females, all males, all noble ones, all worldlings, all celestial beings, all human beings, all those in woeful realms, may they be kind-hearted, may they be relieved from hardship and oppression, may they feel peaceful in body and mind. May they feel happy caring for themselves. May they be liberated from suffering. May they not lose any prosperity that they have gained. May they accept ownership of their actions. To the east, to the west, to the north, to the southeast, to the northwest, to the northeast, to the southwest, downward and upward. May all beings, all breathing beings, all creatures, all individuals, all personalities, all females, all males, all noble ones, all worldlings, all celestial beings, all human beings, all those in woeful realms, may they be kind-hearted. May they be relieved from hardship and oppression. May they feel peaceful in body and mind. May they feel happy caring for themselves. May they be liberated from suffering. May they not lose any prosperity they have gained. May they accept ownership of their actions.